What is up, side hustlers, entrepreneurs, business builders, and dream makers? Welcome to the Set of Your Side Hustle podcast, episode 107. Today, I want to talk to you about the counterintuitive approach I take to sales, and I'm going to give you the 3 frameworks that I think, if you keep them in mind, are more powerful than any sales script you can ever have. So with that being said, let's get into it. Framework number 1. A salesman's job fundamentally is to help the prospect make a decision, not to get them to say yes. We are not in the job of manipulating and distorting and strong-arming people into making decisions they don't want to make. We are in the job of helping people make decisions at all. Why do I say that? Well, really simply, if somebody actually already made up their mind that they knew for a fact they did not want the product or the service that your company sells, they would never get on that sales call, right? The people who've made up their mind and say no do not get on sales calls. And if somebody had already definitively made up their mind that they absolutely wanted the product or the service that your company sells, then as soon as they got on the phone call, they tell you, shut up and take my money, right? So everybody who doesn't do one of those 2 things is asking you to help them make a decision. So your job as a salesman is to help them make a decision. Now, if you're really good at manipulating people and strong-arming them into making decisions they don't want, what does that do for your business? What does that do for the company you work for if you're a salesman for a larger company? It destroys your reputation. It might make you more money today, but it's gonna lose you a lot of money in the long run. Why? Because people who make decisions against their better judgment always regret them. No matter how good the product or service is, they will regret the decision because they didn't actually make it. So your job as a salesman is not to force them to say yes, it's to help them to make a decision at all. And then if you end the call with someone making an affirmative, concrete decision, then you can rest comfortably knowing you did your job well. Framework number 2, a good salesman is fundamentally a good life coach. What do I mean by that? Well, if your job is to help somebody make a decision, then in order to do that, you need to help them overcome all the fallacious beliefs they have and the bad ways of thinking that they have that are limiting them and making it hard for them to make decisions. And you need to help empower them as an individual and help them to recognize and realize that they are a causal agent in their own life and they have the ability to make the decision, and it's not somebody else's or something else's choice. Right? So to do that, you overcome the places where people put the power of choice. People don't like that we are autonomous creatures and that we have free will. They don't like responsibility for making decisions because that means they have the responsibility if it's the wrong decision. And that's why people will often say things like, I don't have time, I don't have money. That's putting the responsibility outside of themselves onto external circumstances. Or they'll say, I need to talk to my spouse, or I can't do it because of my kids, or I need to talk to my business partner. And that's putting the responsibility of the decision outside of themselves onto other people. And that's what people tend to do. They tend to put the power of the decision in the hands of external circumstances outside of their control, or in the hands of other people outside of their control. So your job as a salesman is not only to help them break all their bad thinking habits, but it's also to make them realize, to help them realize, help them to understand that they have the power of making the decision. The decision is not made by their external circumstances. The decision is not made by other people, that it is made by them. And if they can't do it because of their kids, what they should be saying instead is, I have made the decision to prioritize my kids over this. And if that's what they say, then you've done your job. Everything that I just talked about is absolutely life coaching. In order to do that well, in order to have real mindset shifts, you're basically going to be doing NLP. You're basically going to be doing cognitive behavioral therapy. You're basically going to be doing a whole lot of things that you're not qualified for. But fundamentally, that means that you're a life coach, and what you're doing is you're helping somebody unpack bad habits of thinking, bad thinking patterns, correct them so that they can make an informed decision. And then the last thing you do as a salesman is you also want to help them make an informed decision, and that way you want to give them all the information they need in order to know what's right and what they ought to do, which brings us to my last point. Third framework that I think is more powerful than any sales script you'll ever have is simply that whoever cares most about the prospect wins. In fact, I'm going to argue that you can't do frameworks 1 and 2 well unless you're going from the place of earnestly caring about the person in front of you. If you care more about their life, their future, their goals, their desires, their success than they do, then it's going to be really easy to have those hard conversations about where they're putting their power, about the bad ways of thinking that they have, and to make sure that they have sufficient information. If you posture yourself from a position of caring more about them than you do about anything else, the sale included, your own business included, your own future included, at least in the context of this conversation, if you make yourself care about them more than you care about anything else, the resultant will be that they can understand that. In fact, one of the crazy things that you'll see once you actually start caring about the person in front of you is that you can end up using the same exact lines and the same exact scripts that are from like the sleaziest used car salesman that you'll ever find. And you can just say the same exact thing verbatim, and the person will not read it as sleazy. They'll read it as what it truly is, which is authentic and caring. Let me give a small example. I was on a sales call last week, and the prospect was telling me how they don't have sufficient finances and they're concerned that their business is going to go under in the next several months. And then they outlined everything that was their financial stressors, all the concerns they had for the business's finances. And it was a little bit about our services and a lot of it about just everything else that's going on in their business. And after they just shared it all, I asked them if they wanted my advice. And they said, yeah, I would like your advice. I went, okay. So here's my personal story. In my own life, I funded my business on credit cards. In fact, I took out, over the course of a couple of years, over $100,000 in debt and credit cards and my business partner's credit cards so that we could fund growing our business. And everybody in my life told me that I was crazy. They thought that that was a horrible, naive, foolish, silly idea, mistake, and they were right. And today, that same business pays my bills. Pays for this office, right? So here's my advice for you. It's not, just take out debt. That's not what I'm saying. But I decided a long time ago, and I want you to make this decision as well. I think it's gonna be helpful for you today and for the rest of your life as an entrepreneur, and just in life in general. I made the decision a long time ago that living in the 21st century in America, the price is never the problem. I've learned, and I know that you know this too, that if it's valuable enough, if it's important enough, then the money is there. We can find the money because we can take out loans, we can get a credit card, we can borrow from friends and family, we can take out a second mortgage on the house. We live in the land of opportunity, and the money is always there, which means the question is never, can I afford it? Which is putting the power outside of yourself onto external circumstances. But the question instead, in our modern society, is always, is this worth what it will take to afford it? Is this worth what it will take to afford it? And that's the way that I want you to think about it. I don't want you to think, do I have the money? Because that's putting the power outside of yourself, and it's also just, the answer is never no. Not in America today. You can always find a way. The question is it worth it? And that's a much more important question, and that puts the power back on yourself of deciding, do I believe this is worth it moving forward or not? It's my decision, it's not my external circumstances decisions. And then the second thing that I told them, same conversation on the same reason. It's like, then the second thing that I think about is deciding whether to do this now or to do it later. Well, what you just told me is that if you continue down the path that you're on right now for another month or 2 months or 3 months, then you're that much closer to closing your doors forever. I honestly believe that time is more valuable than money. So I think that a month worth of time is more valuable than, well, quite a lot of money, frankly. So I think doing things sooner is more valuable. And I think you need to change something. And maybe this is it, maybe this isn't it. But I think you need to change something. Because I think if you want to continue, I don't like where this path goes. I don't like what happens if you continue down this path. I want you to get on a different path. Everything I just said could absolutely be a script. Could absolutely just be what a high pressure flow salesman is told to say when he's given the finance objection, the money objection, right? It wasn't. It was earnest and real with the person I was talking to at the time, and it was from my heart because I cared about them. I wanted what was best for them. And in those moments, what could be a sleazy script, because it's authentic and from a place of care and concern, comes across to the prospect as care and concern, and they take it to heart. At least that's my experience. So quick recap. The 3 frameworks that I think are more powerful than any sales script you can ever have as a salesman are: first, your job fundamentally is to help them make a decision, not to force them to say yes. Second, in order to help them make a decision, you must be a really good life coach. Help them unpack all their baggage, fix their thinking, and move forward, empowering them to make a decision. Third, you do that best when you are operating from a position of caring about them more than they care about them, caring about their success, their future, their goals, their vision, caring about them most. You put all that together, and your job is to help them say yes or no before they get off the call. And one frame that I use to package that back in when they say, hey, can I think about it? My response is always, absolutely, 100%. By the way, quick question. Is there anything that you're going to be processing on your own that you haven't shared with me yet that you think might be helpful for us to process together? And the reason I ask that is because having come from a position of care, and they know that I care, and we've already processed a lot of stuff together and it's already been helpful for them, they're very inclined to say yes and then to share more with me than they have so far, so that we can kind of overcome that I gotta think about it hurdle. And the big thing about that is you could also just be explicit with them that they're probably not gonna actually think about it, right? So let's process it now, otherwise it probably won't be processed. Our job is to help them make a decision, not to say yes or no. When you realize that it's to say yes or no, not to say yes, not to say no, to say yes or no to make an affirmative decision, suddenly sales becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot more enjoyable. And one of the cool things about it is, in the case I was just sharing, I actually think that the sales call, based on the fact that we are working together and they took it to heart and they actually listened to the advice I gave them and they actually implemented the advice I gave them, I actually think the sales call was more valuable than the service that I sold them. Why? Because I think the service that I sold them is going to help them grow their business. And the advice I gave them is how to make decisions, which goes into every aspect of life, and they can take with them for the rest of their journey, no matter how long our professional relationship lasts. When you realize that you're actually just doing an overwhelming good when you do sales properly, you get excited about sales, no matter how much you're not a salesman, which I never was before I learned that this is what sales is supposed to be. Anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. I'll be back in your earbuds again very soon. Love y'all. God bless.